I've been self-employed for 26 years. So, prior to the show, I understood the importance of making it happen every day.
A major part of American Pickers disappeared, and fans were never given the full story. For years, millions watched Mike Wolfe, Fritz, and Danielle Colby turn forgotten items into one of television's biggest reality hits. But behind the scenes, things began to shift in ways viewers didn't fully understand. Changes happened quietly. Explanations didn't always add up. And over time, the show started to feel different. So what really happened to the cast? And why does the story seem more complicated than it appeared? Join us as we take a closer look.
I know exactly what you mean.
I bought a motorcycle when I was 15. I still got it.
Do you?
Yep.
Well,
Oh, yeah. We both ride quite a
One of the
bit.
bikes in there is it's been with us over 40 years.
Mike Wolfe, the picker who built everything. Mike Wolfe was 46 years old when American Pickers premiered, and he was not a man who needed the show to validate his identity. He had been picking since he was 4 years old. Not in the casual Sunday morning flea market sense of the word. In the committed, obsessive, drove a van across the country looking for barns sense. He grew up in Joliet, Illinois, the son of a single mother, and discovered antiques the way some children discover sports, as the thing that made the most sense of a world that did not always make sense otherwise. He opened antique archaeology in LeClaire, Iowa, in 2000, a decade before the show, as a legitimate commercial operation that served serious collectors and dealers. When the History Channel came calling, they were not turning a hobbyist into a personality. They were pointing a camera at a professional who had been doing the work for 4 decades, who had opinions about every object he touched, and whose enthusiasm for the things he found was completely genuine and entirely infectious. The show made him famous in the specific and permanent way that 15 years of sustained television exposure makes a person famous. Recognizable everywhere he went, associated in the public mind with a single image: the tall man in the van who got excited about old motorcycles and paid fair prices and genuinely loved what he was doing. The fame also created the Nashville expansion, Antique Archaeology Nashville, which opened in 2011 in a former 1914 car factory and became a tourist destination that drew fans of the show from across the country. Both locations became places where people went not just to buy things, but to stand inside something they had watched on television for years. That is a specific kind of cultural footprint that very few reality television shows ever generate. In 2026, Mike Wolfe is 61 years old and in the middle of the most deliberate reinvention of his post-American Pickers career that anyone in his position could have attempted. The Nashville location of Antique Archaeology closed in 2025, which he announced on Instagram as a decision driven by the need to pursue projects that had been pulling at his soul for years. He has been dating Letitia Klein since 2021, following his divorce from Jody Faith in 2021 after 14 years of marriage. He and Klein were in a serious car accident in 2024 that she documented on social media, describing the recovery as difficult and the experience as clarifying in the way that frightening things sometimes are. He played a role in the 2025 film Day of Reckoning. He launched History's Greatest Picks with Mike Wolfe on the History Channel in February 2026, a spin-off that focuses on the historical significance of the objects he finds rather than the negotiation process that had always been the center of American Pickers. He is, in every discernible way, a man who has decided he is not done, but that what he is doing next is going to be different from what he was doing before. Mike Wolfe is moving forward. Fritz cannot. And the story of what happened to Fritz between the last time he appeared on American Pickers and the morning of September 30th, 2024, is one of the most painful stories that the show's long run has produced. How did the man who spent 11 seasons making television with Mike Wolfe end up where he did? Frank Fritz, the partner who did not make it. Frank Fritz was born on October 11, 1963, in Davenport, Iowa, which made him a local to the same stretch of the Mississippi River where Mike Wolfe had built antique archaeology in LeClaire. He and Wolfe had been friends and picking partners for years before the cameras arrived, a relationship that had been forged in the actual work rather than in a television development meeting. Fritz brought his own specific expertise to the partnership. He was particularly known for his knowledge of vintage toys, early American advertising, folk art, and the kind of mid-century American commercial ephemera that occupies its own dedicated corner of the collector world. The dynamic between them on the show was real in ways that audiences could sense, but could not fully articulate. Fritz brought something to American pickers that the show could not manufacture: genuine expertise, a specific and personal enthusiasm for the objects themselves, and a quality of being authentically himself on camera that viewers found more compelling than almost any constructed television personality could have been. He left the show in 2021, and the official version at the time was that the departure was voluntary and related to his health. He had undergone back surgery and described the recovery as difficult. But the fuller version, which emerged in interviews Fritz gave after his departure, was more complicated. He had struggled with Crohn's disease for years. He had struggled with alcohol. The relationship between him and Wolfe, whatever it had been during the show's peak years, had become strained in ways that neither of them was fully willing to describe publicly. Fritz gave an interview to The Sun in which he said he had not heard from Wolfe since his departure, and described the silence as hurtful. Wolfe's response, to whatever extent there was a public response, was measured and largely avoided the specifics. Two men who had spent 11 years in a van together, who had built something that neither of them could have built alone, had arrived at a place where they were not speaking. In July 2021, Fritz suffered a stroke. He was 57 years old. The stroke left him hospitalized for weeks and required a rehabilitation process that he documented in a limited way on social media, enough for his fans to understand the severity without providing the full picture of what recovery from a significant stroke actually involves. He and Wolfe reconciled, in the public sense, with a visit in May 2023, photographed and posted the two men together again. Fritz deferred returning to the show at that point due to his health. The reconciliation was real, but the health situation was too serious for a return. He was managing the stroke's aftermath while also managing the pre-existing conditions that had been part of his life for decades. The official death certificate, filed after his death on September 30th, 2024, listed the cause as a late sequel of cerebral infarction, meaning the stroke that had happened 3 years earlier had ultimately been what killed him. Frank Fritz was 60 years old. The fans who had watched him negotiate over vintage motorcycles and old toy trains and American folk art for 11 seasons received the news with the specific grief that comes from losing a beloved television personality. He had been in their living rooms every week for over a decade. His laugh, his enthusiasm, his specific and genuine love of the objects he picked, the way he got louder when he found something extraordinary, was part of the furniture of their viewing lives. He also represented something beyond the picking itself, a kind of authenticity that audiences find increasingly rare. A man who was clearly not performing for the cameras because what he was on camera was indistinguishable from what he was everywhere else. He had his struggles and his health problems and his complicated relationship with his former partner. And none of that diminished what he had built across those 11 seasons. He was, by every account of people who knew him, the same man off camera as he was on it. And then he was gone, and the show that had made him famous was airing without him. And the man he had once not spoken to for years had come to see him in 2023, and the two of them had been photographed together. And now there would not be another photograph. Frank Fritz's death made the question of American Pickers' future both more urgent and more painful. The show could not pretend he had simply stepped away. He was dead, and the person in the cast who seemed most affected by all of it, and most honest about what it meant for her own life, was Danielle Colby. What has she been doing? And what did she mean when she said the show was done? Danielle Colby, the woman who said the quiet. Part out loud. Danielle Colby was not an antique picker when Mike Wolfe hired her to manage his Iowa shop. She was a burlesque performer and dance teacher, a former member of a roller derby league, a woman whose aesthetic sensibility ran toward the theatrical and the transgressive in ways that the antique world did not typically accommodate. Wolfe hired her anyway, and what she brought to the show was something the format would not have predicted. An energy and a personality that made the office segments genuinely watchable rather than simply functional. A sense of humor that cut through the earnestness of the picking world, and a physical presence that was so completely itself that it was impossible to look away. She became famous for her burlesque performances alongside her television work, which generated both a dedicated following and a controversy that she has never been particularly interested in managing. She does not manage controversy. She creates things and lets the response be whatever it is. She has been using they/them pronouns since at least 2022, a transition in public identity that she has discussed openly in interviews and on social media. She married Jeremy Shush, a hairdresser, and has described the relationship as one of the most stabilizing things in her personal life. She has 3 children from previous relationships. She moved to France for a period during the pandemic, which generated a distinct reaction from the American Pickers audience, some of whom were already processing her evolving public identity with varying degrees of comfort. She has never particularly modulated herself for the audience's comfort. That was always both the most compelling thing about her on the show and the thing that occasionally made her the target of the kind of online hostility that public figures who do not perform conventionality tend to attract. In early 2025, she underwent surgery, which she described as difficult and necessary, and related to a health issue she did not fully disclose publicly. The healing process was hard and extended, taking longer than the medical team had initially projected and requiring a period of rest and adjustment that she described in general terms on social media without offering the specific details. She came out of it with a clarity about what she wanted the next chapter of her life to look like. Less television, more direct engagement with the things she cared about most. The Ecdesiast Arts Museum, which she opened in Davenport, Iowa, is a space dedicated to the history and culture of burlesque. The performances, the costumes, the performers, the specific thread of American entertainment history that mainstream culture has always been uncomfortable fully acknowledging. The name itself is educational. An ecdesiast is a stripper, a word coined by H.L. Mencken at the request of Gypsy Rose Lee. And the fact that the museum bears it as its name tells you everything you need to know about how seriously Danielle Colby takes the cultural dignity of what she is preserving. It is, in other words, exactly the kind of project that Danielle Colby would build. Serious, specific, personal, and operating in a space that requires a certain amount of not caring what people think. On December 3, 2025, her 50th birthday, she posted an Instagram video in which she said, "American Pickers was done." The History Channel's A+E executive Dan Silberman told The Mirror that there was no truth to that announcement. Colby deactivated her Instagram account. The network confirmed it was not producing new episodes, but could go back into production early in 2026. The Nashville Antique Archaeology location closed. History's Greatest Picks, with Mike Wolfe, launched in February 2026. Danielle Colby turned 50, started figuring out how to fund a burlesque museum without a television salary, and is proceeding with the specific combination of determination and improvisation that has characterized every other chapter of her life. The original three are accounted for: one dead, one pivoting to a new show, one building a museum and figuring out what comes next. But American Pickers was never just three people. Who filled the gap when Frank left? And where are they now? Robbie Wolfe, Jersey John, and the people who kept it going. After Frank Fritz's 2021 departure, American Pickers faced the specific challenge that all long-running duo shows face when one half of the duo leaves. How do you replace someone who was never interchangeable in the first place? The answer the production settled on was not to try. Instead of finding a single replacement, the show began rotating companions for Mike, drawing from the people already connected to the operation. Mike's younger brother, Robbie Wolfe, who had been appearing on the show since season 1 in various capacities, took on a more significant role. Jersey John Saleh, a motorcycle expert and woodworker who had been a recurring presence since season 3, became a more regular co-picker. The show filmed both of them on independent trips as well, expanding the format to accommodate the absence of Fritz, rather than simply papering over it. Robbie Wolfe is Mike's kid brother in the most literal sense of the phrase. Younger, warmer, slightly less intense than the older Wolfe, more immediately accessible to strangers on their property, which is a useful quality in a picker. He had been a fan favorite since his earliest appearances, bringing a levity to his interactions with sellers that Mike's focused professionalism occasionally compressed out of a scene. His 137 appearances on the show across 15 years make him one of the most frequently seen figures in the entire run, even if he was never a lead. He has continued to run his own picking and real estate operations in Iowa during the hiatus, maintaining the Midwest grounding that the show always used as a cultural anchor. Jersey John Saleh is, by the consensus of the fan base that developed after Fritz's departure, the most effective of Fritz's various replacements, in the limited sense that any replacement for an 11-year co-lead can be called effective. He is a motorcycle man in a way that aligns with Mike's own obsessions, and the scenes between them when a vintage bike appears on someone's property have a quality of shared expertise that generates some of the more genuinely interesting moments in the post-Fritz seasons. His woodworking background adds a dimension that Fritz's collecting focus did not provide. He has continued to restore motorcycles during the hiatus, documenting the work on social media, operating as the show's motorcycle conscience in the way that Fritz operated as its general enthusiasm engine. He is not Frank Fritz. Nothing has been Frank Fritz since Frank Fritz left, but he is a good and specific television presence in his own right, and the show has been better for having him in it. Season 27 aired, the Nashville store closed, Danielle said the show was done, the network said it was not done, but was not making more episodes right now. So what is the actual status of American Pickers in 2026? And is there a world where the show continues in its original form? Where the show stands in 2026? The honest answer to where American Pickers stands in 2026 is that nobody outside the network fully knows, and the people inside the network are giving answers that are technically true and strategically ambiguous at the same time. Season 27 premiered on July 2nd, 2025, ran through the summer, and dropped its final 3 episodes in December. The History Channel confirmed to multiple outlets that it has a full season in the can and is airing it. It also confirmed it is not currently producing new episodes, but could go back into production. Mike Wolfe's new show, History's Greatest Picks, launched in February 2026 on the same network. The Nashville antique archaeology location closed. Danielle Colby is building a burlesque museum in Davenport. The show's season 27 viewership dropped below 450,000 for some episodes, a steep decline from the 5.3 million that had made it the #1 nonfiction series on cable television in 2010. What those numbers reflect is not simply the passage of time or the departure of Frank Fritz, though both of those things are real factors. They reflect the broader fragmentation of cable television audiences that has happened across the industry since streaming platforms emerged as the dominant entertainment delivery system. The people who watched American Pickers in 2010 on their cable boxes were watching it in an environment where the competition for that time slot was a different category of competition than it is today. The show that pulled 5.3 million viewers in September 2010 would not pull 5.3 million viewers in September 2025, even if every element of the show were exactly the same, because the audience for cable reality television has contracted across the board in ways that have nothing to do with the specific show. What American Pickers was, at its best, was a show about the specific romance of old things and the people who keep them. Who was your favorite picker from the original run? And do you think the show can survive without Frank Fritz at the center of what made it work? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.